Tonight, we're going to do something a little bit different. You see, for the past several months as we have gone through this series of lessons, we focused on the miracles that Jesus performed in Luke's Gospel, noting that no matter how deep the valley and dark the valley was, that Jesus was able to help people cross that valley, that he was able to help them climb up out of that valley into a mountaintop experience. Using Luke's Gospel, because Luke was a physician, because he was a doctor, and as such he would provide us with special information, if you will, concerning the various diseases that Jesus was able to heal. This lesson, though, tonight focuses on a collection of parables that Jesus told. All of them come from Luke chapter 15, if you want to open up your Bibles to Luke chapter 15. And all of them deal with what we might call the lost and found of the gospel. And all three of them must be understood in light of Luke 15 verses 1 and 2. Luke 15 verses 1 and 2 tells us, "Now the tax collectors and sinners were gathering around to hear him. But the Pharisees and the teachers of the law muttered, 'This man welcomes sinners and eats with them.'" During this time of Jesus' ministry, tax collectors and quote-unquote sinners were habitually around Jesus. He attracted them because of his personality, perhaps because of his non-judgmental attitude. But for whatever reason, people like this were flocking to Jesus. These, though, were the outcasts of society. They were the shunned in society. They were the quote-unquote dirty people. They were the people that you didn't want to have anything to do with. And so the religious leaders muttered or murmured about Jesus, welcoming them and even eating with them. Because you see, to eat with somebody was to share fellowship with them. And to share fellowship was, to fellowship with an undesirable was unforgivable in the minds of these religious leaders. Jesus, though, doesn't repel the charge. He doesn't jump down the religious leaders' throats for making such an accusation. Instead, he actually takes that and runs with it. He builds on what they intended to be an insult. He is able to build on and tell three parables which show the godlikeness of this practice. Three parables that show us that foregoing the quote-unquote popular crowd and going instead to someone who really needs a friend, and how godlike that really, truly is. The first of the parables has to deal with the sheep that wandered off. Luke 15 verses 3 through 7 says this. Then Jesus told them this parable. "Suppose one of you has 100 sheep and loses one of them. Does he not leave the 99 in the open country and go after the lost sheep until he finds it? And when he finds it, he joyfully puts it on his shoulders and goes home. Then he calls his friends and neighbors together and says, 'Rejoice with me, I have found my lost sheep.' I tell you that in the same way there will be more rejoicing in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous persons who do not need to repent." When we think about the sheep, we notice that it's lost. How did it become lost, though? We're curious to know this because it kind of affects our understanding, except for the fact that, we're not told. We're not told how the sheep became lost, just that it became lost. Now, if you turn over to Matthew 18, Matthew's account, he kind of sort of tells us that the sheep wandered off. And so maybe that's what happened. But whether it was lured away or carried away or just wandered away all on its own really doesn't matter. What matters is that it was lost. What matters is that it was no longer in the care of the shepherd. What matters is that it was no longer where it was supposed to be. What also matters is the shepherd's response to the lost sheep. Because he goes and looks for it, how it is found. The shepherd leaves the 99. He leaves the 99 in the open country, in familiar territory, where it's safe, where they can feed and rest and other things in safety and security. He leaves the 99 and he goes and he looks for the one. And he locates the one. Now notice what it says. He searches until he finds it. That's a very telling statement that oftentimes can be overlooked. Has anyone here ever lost a pet? I remember we had a dog that was an outside dog, stayed in our backyard, and I guess it was because of a drought or something. Somehow the back gate to our backyard had shifted a little bit, and the little clip thingy-mabobber wasn't clipping on the post like it was. Excuse me for the technical terms, okay? It wasn't clipping anymore. It was about an inch or so off of it. And so we came home one Saturday after going somewhere for something, and our dog wasn't in the backyard. But the back gate was wide open. And so we looked, and I went out the back gate and went out in the alley and everything. And that was a scary place, the alley with all the overgrowth and stuff. But didn't find her. And we kept looking for her and went around the neighborhood and asked some people who were having a yard sale. They said, yeah, we saw her, or we saw a dog, and we called the pound. Thank you. See, the pound was able to open on Saturday to come and pick up dogs, but you couldn't go and get your dog until Monday. And so we called, and they said, well, yeah, and we described her, Great Pyrenees, white, and so forth. And yeah, we have her. Okay, good. And we said, can we come get her? They said, well, you got to wait till Monday. And that was a long time because we love our dogs that we have, okay? We love them. And when we lost her, we weren't going to stop looking until we did find her. But see, the point is not that all lost sheep must be found. That's not the point of the parable or of the story. Because you see, this story highlights the joy in finding it. And if every sheep that was ever lost was always found, there would be no joy. It would be expected. It would be, well, okay, I guess I'll leave the 99 here, go find the one, because it's going to turn up for sure, unharmed and just in great shape and everything. The joy is amplified by the uncertainty of the search. The shepherd doesn't know if he's going to find the sheep. The shepherd doesn't know when he finds the sheep, if the sheep is going to be alive or dead, or injured, or what have you. He doesn't know. So the joy is amplified because the search is so uncertain. But also note that he celebrates when he finds it. Notice his actions toward the sheep. He joyfully puts it up on his shoulders. If that sheep had been injured, he would tend to the wounds that the sheep had and carry it home on his shoulders because he's so happy, so filled with joy because he found his lost sheep. Now you notice something that is noticeably absent from this parable is the shepherd scolding the sheep. Is the shepherd saying, well, sheep, you can come back into the fold, but you're on probation. You can't do this stuff. You can do this over here. You can come and be a part of the flock, but we've got certain rules now because you wandered off. None of that's present. What's present is the shepherd joyfully putting the sheep on his shoulders and going back to his home. And his actions not just with the sheep, but his actions with his friends. Because you see, his friends would likely know about his loss. He likely would have told them, maybe called one of them to come out and watch the 99 while he went and looked for the one. Because they would know of his loss, they too would share in his celebration. So when 1 out of 100 sheep is lost and then found, there's much rejoicing and celebration that goes on. But what if the ratio drops a little bit? What if instead of, say, 1 out of 100, what if it was, say, 1 out of 10 that was lost? Well, guess what? Jesus helps us out. He helps us out with the parable about the lost coin, verses 8 through 10. Or suppose a woman has 10 silver coins and loses one. Does she not light a lamp, sweep the house, and search carefully until she finds it? And when she finds it, she calls her friends and neighbors together and says, "Rejoice with me, I have found my lost coin." In the same way, I tell you, there is rejoicing in the presence of the angels of God over one sinner who repents. Now, once again, we were curious as to how it is lost. This time we're told a little bit about that. Well, we're told the woman loses it. That's about it. But that's all we really need to know, is she lost it. Again, we're not told exactly how. Again, how is not important. What's important is that the coin was lost, that it is gone. Now you might say, now wait a second, preacher. It's a coin. In our monetary system of exchange, a coin is not really worth a whole lot. I mean, yes, we have the little gold dollars and stuff, and that's worth $1, but really, $1 won't even get you a gallon of gasoline anymore, right? So, it can't be that big a deal. Well, actually, if you look at your footnotes, you find out that this coin was actually a drachma. Now, from the time that I went to Greece on a mission trip, I have some drachmas at home that I keep as keepsakes. I tried to find one to bring and show you, but I couldn't find them. But I know they're there somewhere. Okay? Anyway, but still, drachmas aren't worth a whole lot today. So really, we're not talking about actually, you read a little further in your footnotes, and it says Greek 10 drachmas, each worth about a day's wage. So it's not just a piddly little coin that she loses. It's a coin that was worth a day's wage. This coin would represent perhaps 1/10 of her life's savings. And she's lost it. So the importance is seen in its monetary value, but there's also something else that we need to understand. The sentimental value. See, there was a Jewish custom that every married woman would scrape and save and penny pinch and do whatever she could until she had 10 silver coins. And then she would put those 10 silver coins on a string of some sort and make either a necklace or a headdress or something along those lines, and she would wear it proudly because it was the sign of a married woman. It was kind of like a wedding ring would be for us today. How would you feel if you lost your wedding ring? From personal experience, not very good. My first wedding ring, this is not my first wedding ring, it's my second. My first wedding ring is at the bottom of Canyon Lake, Texas somewhere. Long story, I'll tell you later. Point is, it's not necessarily the monetary value that is all we're talking about. The importance is also seen in the likely sentimental value. And yes, the financial loss would be great, but the sentimental value even greater. The coin is lost. Perhaps that's how it was lost. Perhaps she had those 10 coins on a string and the string broke and the coins scattered everywhere. And she found 9 of them, but she couldn't find that last one. Well, so the search is begun. A search begins as far as how it is found. A lamp is lit. Now, if we were to go into a dark room, what's likely the first thing that we're going to do? Turn on the light. Yes, we're going to flip a switch and instantly lights are going to come on. Well, they didn't have electricity in the first century. And so instead of turning on a light, they would have to light an oil lamp. Now, this could be key because, a lot of times if you lose something that's fairly small, but it's a shiny item, if you have just a little bit of light and you shine it all over the room, it's going to the item will reflect back, and it may be easier for you to find it. Well, she lights this lamp. Oil wasn't cheap, by the way, but the coin's worth it. And so she's in the dark house. She lights the lamp to look and see. Hopefully the reflection will catch her eye. And then, when that doesn't work, she sweeps her house. Now, why do you sweep your house? To clean, right? Because a clean house is important, and she's going to clean her house so that she can find the coin, right? Wrong. Because you see, the houses in first century Palestine had dirt floors that were covered by dried reeds, okay? Anyone ever sweep a dirt floor? You sweep it and guess what? There's dirt underneath the dirt. And then there's more dirt, and you're not going to ever get rid of the dirt. She doesn't sweep the house to clean. She sweeps it in hopes of dislodging the coin. While she's sweeping, she's listening for the tinkle of the coin as it moves around. Or she's got that oil lamp going. As she's sweeping, she's listening and she's looking if she catches a gleam of the reflection. But she searches for it. And then she finds it. And when she finds it, the celebration ensues. She gets everyone together and she throws a big party because it was so important to her. Yes, she had 9 other coins, but that one coin was so very, very important. So when a lost sheep is found, it's worthy of a celebration. When a lost coin is recovered, whether its value is purely financial or there's some sentimental value, it's cause for a party as well. 1 out of 100, 1 out of 10. What about 1 out of 2? And what if we're not talking about property anymore, but what if we're talking about a member of the family? Perhaps a son. Well, follow along as I read verses 11 through 32. Jesus continued, "There is a man who had 2 sons. The younger one said to his father, 'Father, give me my share of the estate.' So he divided his property between them. Not long after that, the younger son got together all he had, set off for a distant country, and there squandered his wealth in wild living. After he had spent everything, there was a severe famine in the land, in that whole country, and he began to be in need. So he went off and hired himself out to a citizen of that country, who sent him to his fields to feed pigs. He longed to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. When he came to his senses, he said, 'How many of my father's hired men have food to spare, and here I am starving to death? I will set out and go back to my father and say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired men.' So he got up and went to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. The son said to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. But the father said to his servants, Quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. So they began to celebrate. Meanwhile, the older son was in the field. When he came near the house, he heard music and dancing. So he called one of the servants and asked him what was going on. Your brother has come, he replied, and your father has killed the fattened calf because he has him back safe and sound. The older brother became angry and refused to go in. So his father went out and pleaded with him. But he answered his father, Look, all these years I've been slaving for you and never disobeyed your orders. Yet you never gave me even a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours, who has squandered your property with prostitutes, comes home, you kill the fattened calf for him? My son, the father said, You are always with me, and everything I have is yours. But we had to celebrate and be glad, because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. Just like the other two parables, first thing we wonder is how he is lost. Here, though, we are not left to wonder anything about it. Bottom line, he leaves on his own. Notice the callousness of his statement. Father, give me my share of the estate. See, it doesn't sound too bad to us here. But what the son was really saying is, Dad, since I'm going to get this when you die anyway, you may as well die now because I want it. I want my share. Notice how callous that is. How arrogant. Dad, I know better what's good for me than you know what's good for me. I have a better handle on what I want to do with my life than you do. And the rebellious attitude. Notice he takes everything. By taking everything, what he's saying is, I am never coming back. I don't even want to come back to visit. I don't even want to come back at any time in the future. I am gone and gone for good. He leaves on his own, and he leaves for a foreign country, a distant country. Apparently, his daddy's very wealthy. When you're very wealthy, you have influence. And many times that influence spreads to various other families in the immediate area. And so he says, I am not even going to stay anywhere close to home. He goes off to as far away as possible, so there's no chances of his daddy interfering with his plans. No chances of his daddy finding out where he is and talking to the people he's around and getting them to push him back towards his family. He gets as far away as he possibly can. But then he's found. How he is found is important. Two things happen. First of all, he learns. He learns because he wastes everything on wild living and big parties. He's got a lot of friends when he has some money. But as soon as the money leaves, so does the rest of his friends. And he's left destitute with nothing. And then a famine hits. And not just any type of famine, a small famine, but a severe famine comes on that whole land. And he's begging for anything. And finally, he finds someone who is hiring, and he sends him into his fields to feed his pigs. Now to you and I, pigs don't mean that much. But to a Jewish audience that Jesus was speaking to, pigs were not clean. Pigs did not have anything, they didn't want to have anything to do with pigs. And yet this boy is so destitute that he longs to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs are eating, but no one gave him anything. His lessons learned when he remembers. He remembers how good even the servants have it in his father's house. And so he returns. He returns, and his plan is to go to his father and say, make me one of your hired men. Now, what that means is not necessarily a household servant or even a household slave. What he's saying is, make me like one of the day laborers in your home. A day-to-day contract. If you're not happy with me one day, you can get rid of me. That's how low on the totem pole that he is willing to go. But his father is watching for him. And I imagine that over the course of the time that the son's been gone, as the father was doing his work, he would see a silhouette coming down the road. And he would look and he would squint, trying to see who it was, only to be disappointed that it wasn't his youngest son. Time after time after time. But then he sees a silhouette coming down the road. And it's a very familiar silhouette. And he's thinking to himself, maybe it is him, maybe it is him. And then when he gets close enough to see him and he knows for sure, without a doubt, that that's his son, he welcomes him home with open arms. While the first two parables deal with the divine side of someone who is lost being found, this parable looks at the human side. So not only do we need to look at how he is lost and how he is found, but how he is received. First, by the father. Notice the father says, "Quick, bring the best robe." Now, why is putting a robe on his son significant? A robe was a mark of honor. And the better the robe, the higher the honor. And so he says, don't just bring a robe, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger. A ring was a symbol of love. We have wedding rings. Monica has a wedding ring. I have a wedding ring. Means a lot to each of us. Even though this is my second one, it still means a lot. Monica has a solitaire that what belonged to my great-grandmother. It's a family heirloom type of thing. It means we love each other. And you and your spouse have that same feeling with the love that you share. And the ring that you used as a symbol of that love. Put shoes on his feet. Shoes were the sign of sonship. Slaves were forbidden from wearing shoes. Not that they could afford them, but they couldn't wear them even if they could afford them. By putting shoes on his feet, they said, "You're not a slave. You're a son." And then he kills the fattened calf. The ultimate expression of joy. That fattened calf that was prepared and saved for only the most special of occasions. And he says, kill the fattened calf and let's celebrate. That's how he's received by the father. Notice how he's received by the brother, though. The brother's very judgmental, don't you think? I mean, he comes near the house and he hears the music and dancing, and rather than going in and looking and seeing for himself, he sends a servant. He says, "Hey, servant, what's going on here?" And the servant tells him, "Oh, your brother has come home." He's not even willing to put forth the effort to check for himself. When the father comes out to him, notice the egotistical attitude the older brother has. "All these years I've been slaving for you, and I never disobeyed your orders." Okay, I've asked this before. How many of you never disobeyed your father? Anyone? Yeah, I thought so. This guy is self-righteous. Never disobeyed your orders. Yeah, right. Then he says, this son of yours. Won't even call him his brother. But the father quickly turns that around, though, doesn't he? I wonder if the older brother, when the father told him, hey, all I have is yours, we had to celebrate because this brother of yours was dead but is alive again. He was lost but is found. I often wonder if the older brother repented and joined in the celebration. I mean, the parable ends rather abruptly, don't you think? And wouldn't it be nice if there was a little bit more closure to the parable? We're left to wonder about the ending. But consider this, though. The older brother muttering and murmuring about the younger brother and the father welcoming him. Doesn't that sound an awful lot like the type of muttering and murmuring the Pharisees were doing back in verse 2? This man welcomes sinners and eats with them. Doesn't sound like the older brother is saying, my father welcomes sinners and kills the fattened calf for them. Maybe Jesus does this to let the religious leaders know that the ball was in their court. They could write their own ending, so to speak, to the parable. Just as the older brother had time to repent and a choice whether or not he would repent, so they too had time to repent, and they too had a choice that they had to make. I'm sure we all know the symbolism in the stories. God is the shepherd. He's represented by the woman and by the father. And we are the sheep, and we are the coin, and we are the son, either one or the other. We all know people who have gone astray. Perhaps even in our own congregation. People who maybe should be here, but they aren't here anymore. For whatever reason. Are we out looking for them? Maybe they've gone astray more than once. Maybe they've gone astray so often that we think, you know what, they're those yo-yo members, you know. They're not here, and then they are here. And then they're not here, and they are here. How will we react when they come home? Even if it's for the umpteenth trillionth time. How are we going to react when they come home? Will we, like the friends and the servants, etc., celebrate? Or will we, like the older brother, be judgmental, judge and condemn them? Not only them, but judge and condemn even those who would dare to welcome them back. I think Jesus doesn't finish this parable, doesn't draw this parable to a close, because we have to write the ending. We have to make a decision. We have a choice to make. The ball is in our court. When someone who is lost is found, how are we going to treat them? How are we going to welcome them? How are we going to respond to them? Will we be like the older brother? Or will we be like the friends and the others who join in the celebration when what was lost is found? This evening you have a choice to make. You can choose to stay as you are, between God, things to stay the same as they are between you and God, or you can choose to make things right if they're not right between you and God. Maybe that choice involves you making a private response where you're at, just praying and asking God to help you to change. Or maybe that choice, maybe that decision needs to be made public. If that's the situation, then I urge you, don't let anything keep you from leaving here with things right between you and your Father. If we can help you in some way through a public response to make things right, won't you come to the front now as we stand and sing together?